What if I told you that the next 20 minutes could fundamentally alter the trajectory of your life? That the principles you're about to hear have transformed ordinary individuals into some of the most successful figures in history? The wisdom I'm about to share isn't new. It has existed for nearly a century, carefully documented and preserved by one of the greatest success philosophers of all time, Napoleon Hill. After interviewing over 500 of the most successful individuals of his era, including titans like Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and Andrew Carnegie, Napoleon Hill distilled their wisdom into principles that anyone can apply. What's truly frightening, and yes, I chose that word deliberately, is how many people will hear these principles and still fail to act upon them, condemning themselves to lives of quiet desperation and unfulfilled potential. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly attract success, wealth, and happiness while others struggle their entire lives, never breaking free from mediocrity? The difference isn't luck, intelligence, or even opportunity. It's something far more fundamental and, frankly, terrifying to confront. The principles that Napoleon Hill uncovered reveal that success and failure aren't random occurrences, but predictable outcomes based on specific mental states and actions. These principles operate with the precision of natural laws, like gravity or thermodynamics, affecting every human being regardless of whether they acknowledge them or not. What's truly frightening is that most people are unconsciously working against these laws every single day, unknowingly sabotaging their own success and happiness. The next 20 minutes will challenge everything you believe about success, wealth, and your own potential. You might feel uncomfortable at times, perhaps even disturbed, as you realize how your own thoughts and beliefs have been quietly limiting your achievements all along. Napoleon Hill wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." But the inverse is equally true and infinitely more disturbing. Whatever limitations you conceive and believe will manifest as your reality. I must warn you that once you understand these principles, you can never return to blissful ignorance. You'll suddenly recognize the invisible forces that have been shaping your life all along, and with that knowledge comes an inescapable responsibility to act. Most people watching this video will experience a profound moment of clarity, a realization that they've been their own worst enemy. Napoleon Hill discovered during his extensive research that fear is the most powerful force holding people back from achieving greatness. Not external fears like spiders or heights, but the insidious internal fears that whisper limiting beliefs into our consciousness. Fear of failure, fear of criticism, fear of success, and fear of the unknown. These fears aren't random psychological quirks. They're sophisticated defense mechanisms designed to keep you safely within your comfort zone, preventing growth and achievement. What should truly scare you is that without intervention, these fears will continue to silently direct your decisions and actions for the rest of your life. This video isn't meant for casual entertainment or passive consumption. If you're looking for lightweight inspiration or feel-good platitudes, I suggest you find something else to watch. The principles I'm about to share require courage to implement and discipline to maintain. They will demand that you confront uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world around you. But for those brave enough to stay, to truly listen and apply what they learn, the transformation will be nothing short of extraordinary. Napoleon Hill once stated that opportunity often comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Consider this video your opportunity, disguised as a 20-minute investment of time, to fundamentally reshape your destiny. Are you prepared to be genuinely frightened by the untapped potential within you? The most terrifying revelation Napoleon Hill made during his 20 years of research wasn't about what successful people do. It was about what the average person fails to do. Every single day, ordinary people make unconscious decisions that systematically sabotage their chances for success, prosperity, and fulfillment. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, beautiful landscape filled with opportunities and abundance, but choosing instead to remain in a small, restricted area because invisible chains, which exist only in your mind, convince you that you cannot move forward. This is not a metaphor. This is the literal reality for millions of people who have never questioned the boundaries of their own thinking. Napoleon Hill discovered that successful individuals aren't necessarily more talented or intelligent. They simply made the decision to break free from these mental restraints and explore the full landscape of possibility that was always available to them. The truly frightening part? These invisible chains are self-imposed, yet most people will live their entire lives never realizing they hold the key to their own liberation. What you're about to learn will likely make you profoundly uncomfortable, because it places the full responsibility for your current circumstances directly on your shoulders. In his landmark work, Napoleon Hill revealed that your thoughts are extraordinarily powerful. They are, in fact, physical energy that radiates from your mind and affects everything around you. Think about this carefully. Every thought you've ever had has contributed to creating the exact life you're currently living. Every fear, every doubt, every limiting belief has materialized into your reality with the precision of a master architect following a blueprint. Successful people understand this principle and guard their thoughts with vigilant attention, carefully selecting which ideas they allow to take root in their consciousness. The average person, meanwhile, allows their mind to be polluted with negative influences from news media, pessimistic friends, and their own unchecked anxieties. This mental environment creates a breeding ground for failure that becomes increasingly difficult to escape as these thought patterns become habitual. The law of attraction isn't some mystical concept. It's a fundamental principle of human psychology that Napoleon Hill observed in action among the world's most accomplished individuals. Your dominant thoughts become magnetized with incredible power, drawing toward you the people, circumstances, and opportunities that align with those thoughts. This process operates with absolute indifference to whether those thoughts serve your higher good or lead to your downfall. If you predominantly think about lack, struggle, and limitation, these very conditions will manifest in your life with startling consistency. What should terrify you is the realization that this mental broadcasting has been happening every moment of your life, without your conscious awareness or direction. Napoleon Hill documented countless cases of individuals who transformed their circumstances dramatically, often within just 30 days. Simply by taking control of this broadcasting process and redirecting it toward their desired outcomes. Perhaps the most frightening principle that Napoleon Hill uncovered is what he termed the devil's workshop, the idle mind that isn't deliberately focused on a definite major purpose. Nature abhors a vacuum, and an unfocused mind becomes filled with fears, doubts, and negative impulses that work against your best interests. These thoughts don't remain harmless abstractions. They crystallize into habits, which solidify into character, which determines destiny. This progression is as predictable as mathematics and equally precise in its outcomes. Think about the trajectory of your own life for a moment. The position you currently occupy is the exact mathematical result of your predominant thoughts over time. This isn't philosophy or theory. It's the practical operation of universal law that affects every human being. The individuals Napoleon Hill studied who achieved extraordinary success all shared one common trait. They aimed their thoughts with laser-like precision toward specific, clearly defined goals and refused to entertain doubts about their ability to achieve them. What separates the extraordinarily successful from the mediocre isn't talent, education, or connections. It's their relationship with failure. Napoleon Hill discovered that failure contains the seeds of equivalent or greater benefit when approached with the right mental attitude. The average person allows failure to define them, accepting it as evidence of their limitations and retreating further into their comfort zone. The successful person, conversely, extracts the lesson from each failure and immediately applies that wisdom toward their next attempt. One individual Napoleon Hill interviewed had failed in business over 1,000 times before finding the formula that brought him enormous wealth. When asked about these failures, the man replied, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. I discovered 1,000 ways that didn't work." This perspective transforms failure from something to be feared into valuable data that brings you one step closer to success. What should frighten you most is how many opportunities you've abandoned at the first sign of difficulty, never realizing how close you might have been to breakthrough. The most alarming discovery Napoleon Hill made during his research was the concept he called drift. Drifting occurs when a person moves through life without definite purpose or plans, responding to whatever circumstance presents itself rather than deliberately directing their own destiny. The drifter lacks both direction and desire sufficient to drive them towards specific achievements. Napoleon Hill estimated that 98% of people fall into this category, living lives dictated by external circumstances rather than internal decisions. These individuals aren't pursuing failure. They simply aren't purposefully pursuing anything at all. The tragedy is that drifters often blame fate, luck, or other people for their unsatisfying circumstances, never realizing that their condition is the direct result of their refusal to take control of their own mental faculties. What's truly frightening about this principle is its silent operation. Most drifters don't recognize themselves as such. They believe they're making choices, when in reality, they're merely reacting to life rather than creating it. Your mind is either your greatest asset or your most dangerous liability, and the difference comes down to one factor: directed control. Napoleon Hill observed that every human mind naturally gravitates toward negative thoughts unless deliberately steered in the opposite direction. This isn't a character flaw or moral failing. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism designed to protect us from potential threats. The problem arises when this ancient protection system interferes with modern achievement. The successful individuals Napoleon Hill studied had all developed systematic methods for directing their thoughts toward constructive goals rather than destructive fears. They understood that mind control isn't optional, it's essential. Either you control your thoughts, or they control you. There is no middle ground. The truly terrifying realization is that most people surrender this control willingly, allowing random external influences to program their internal mental environment. The principle of autosuggestion may be the most powerful tool Napoleon Hill discovered, yet it's also the most widely misunderstood. Your subconscious mind, which controls approximately 95% of your behaviors and decisions, accepts any thought that reaches it through the five senses or is deliberately planted there through conscious repetition. This mechanism works continuously, without discrimination, embedding whatever thoughts you repeatedly expose yourself to. Most people inadvertently program themselves for limitation and mediocrity through careless thinking, negative self-talk, and consumption of pessimistic information. Napoleon Hill taught that transforming your life begins with transforming the thoughts you feed your subconscious mind. Through specific techniques of autosuggestion, repeating empowering statements with emotional conviction, you can literally reprogram your mental operating system. What should scare you is how easily this system can work against you when left unattended. Every self-doubt, every moment of negative self-talk, every pessimistic conversation you engage in is being recorded and implemented by your subconscious mind with perfect fidelity. The masterminds Napoleon Hill studied all understood a principle that most people find deeply uncomfortable. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Your income, attitudes, health habits, ambition, and even your vocabulary will inevitably gravitate toward the average of your closest associates. This isn't opinion, it's psychological law. The human mind naturally assimilates the predominant thoughts and beliefs of those we regularly expose ourselves to. What's truly alarming is how few people deliberately choose their associations based on where they want to go rather than where they currently are. Napoleon Hill documented countless cases of individuals who transformed their fortunes within months simply by changing their personal and professional associations. The most successful people in history have all utilized mastermind alliances, groups of like-minded individuals who share knowledge, resources, and encouragement toward common goals. Meanwhile, millions remain trapped in mediocrity because they fear the discomfort of outgrowing their current social circles. Perhaps the most frightening principle Napoleon Hill uncovered is what he called the law of increasing returns. This law states that mental momentum, whether positive or negative, doesn't build linearly but exponentially. Once your mind starts moving in a particular direction, each subsequent thought makes the next thought of similar nature more likely and more powerful. This creates either an upward spiral toward achievement or a downward spiral toward failure, with the velocity increasing in either direction. The implications of this principle are staggering. A relatively small shift in your habitual thinking patterns can produce dramatically different long-term outcomes. Napoleon Hill observed that the difference between the highest achievers and the average person often came down to just a few key decisions and thought patterns established early in their careers. These seemingly minor divergences in trajectory led to vastly different destinations over time. What should truly terrify you is the realization that your current thought habits are creating momentum that will continue to compound, for better or worse, throughout your lifetime unless deliberately interrupted and redirected. The most disturbing principle Napoleon Hill documented was the existence of what he termed hypnotic rhythm. This phenomenon explains why breaking free from established patterns of thought and behavior becomes increasingly difficult over time. Every thought that occupies your mind creates neural pathways in your brain that become more deeply entrenched with repetition. Eventually, these pathways become so established that they operate automatically, below the level of conscious awareness. Napoleon Hill likened this to a record player needle following the grooves in a vinyl record. Once the pattern is established, deviation requires significant force and deliberate action. This explains why so many people remain trapped in cycles of limitation despite sincerely wanting something better for themselves. Their conscious desires compete against years or decades of mental programming running silently in the background. What's truly frightening about hypnotic rhythm is that it operates with perfect impartiality. It will just as readily establish patterns of failure as patterns of success. The difference comes down to which patterns you've allowed to become established through repetition. The principle of definite major purpose separates the extraordinary achievers from the merely busy. Napoleon Hill discovered that without a clear, specific goal that ignites genuine emotional desire, human beings naturally dissipate their energy across countless trivial activities that produce no meaningful results. A definite major purpose serves as a lens, focusing scattered mental and physical resources into a concentrated beam capable of overcoming any obstacle. The most successful individuals Napoleon Hill studied could state their primary objective in a single sentence and had organized their entire lives around its achievement. Every decision they made was filtered through one question: does this move me closer to or further from my definite major purpose? Meanwhile, The average person drifts through life responding to whatever seems most urgent or appealing in the moment, never harnessing the exponential power that comes from sustained focus. What should alarm you is how many potentially world-changing ideas and talents remain undeveloped because their owners never organized them around a specific, compelling purpose. The most misunderstood principle Napoleon Hill identified is the role of desire in achievement. Most people confuse mere wishing with genuine desire. Wishing is passive and impotent. Desire is active and irresistible. Napoleon Hill observed that true desire manifests as an obsession that dominates your thoughts, influences your actions, and persists despite repeated setbacks. He documented numerous cases where individuals with modest abilities but burning desire far outperformed those with superior talents but lukewarm interest. The intensity of your desire directly determines the force with which you'll pursue your goals and the resilience you'll demonstrate when facing obstacles. What's truly frightening is Napoleon Hill's observation that most people never experience genuine desire at all. They settle for mild preferences and casual interests, then wonder why they achieve only mediocre results. The successful individuals Napoleon Hill studied all described moments when their desire for a particular outcome became so intense that failure became literally inconceivable to them. This level of emotional commitment activates mental resources and creative faculties that remain dormant under ordinary circumstances. The principle of specialized knowledge reveals a paradox that many find deeply unsettling. Napoleon Hill discovered that general education and intelligence have surprisingly little correlation with financial success or achievement. What matters is not what you know, but how effectively you can organize and apply what you know toward specific objectives. The most successful individuals Napoleon Hill studied weren't necessarily the most academically accomplished. Many had limited formal education. Instead, they excelled at acquiring precisely the knowledge needed for their particular goals and combining that knowledge with practical action. Meanwhile, countless highly educated people remain in positions far below their potential because they've never translated their knowledge into results. Napoleon Hill documented that the most valuable form of knowledge is often not found in classrooms, but through experience, specialized training, and association with experts in one's chosen field. What should disturb you is how many people pride themselves on knowledge they've never applied toward any productive purpose. The principle of infinite intelligence may be the most profound, and for many, the most frightening, concept Napoleon Hill uncovered during his research. He observed that the most accomplished individuals throughout history had developed methods for accessing wisdom and ideas that appeared to transcend their conscious intellectual capabilities. Through techniques including meditation, focused questioning, and what Napoleon Hill termed sitting for ideas, these remarkable achievers tapped into what appeared to be a universal reservoir of knowledge. Napoleon Hill concluded that the human mind, when properly attuned, can receive insights and inspirations from sources beyond itself. Whether this represents accessing the collective unconscious, communicating with higher aspects of one's own consciousness, or connecting with divine intelligence remains open to interpretation. What's undeniable is that Napoleon Hill documented hundreds of cases where breakthrough ideas arrived not through logical reasoning, but through sudden intuitive flashes experienced during states of mental receptivity. What should truly frighten you is how many transformative ideas you've likely missed because your mind was too cluttered with doubts, worries, and trivial concerns to receive them. The most alarming principle Napoleon Hill identified is what he called the law of compensation. This immutable law dictates that you will always be compensated in direct proportion to the quantity and quality of service you render, the difficulty of replacing you, and the spirit in which you deliver your service. The marketplace never pays for what you know. It pays only for what you do with what you know. Napoleon Hill observed that financial struggles almost always stem from violation of this principle in one of three ways: delivering mediocre service, making yourself easily replaceable, or performing your work with a reluctant spirit. The truly frightening aspect of this law is its mathematical precision. You cannot escape its operation, no matter how much you might wish to. Every single person who achieved lasting financial success in Napoleon Hill's studies had discovered how to deliver extraordinary value that exceeded their monetary compensation. Meanwhile, those who sought to extract maximum reward for minimum contribution invariably found themselves struggling financially, often blaming external circumstances for their plight. The principle of accurate thinking stands as one of the most challenging concepts Napoleon Hill discovered. He noted that the human mind naturally gravitates toward opinions rather than facts, assumptions rather than verified information, and beliefs that are comfortable rather than true. Napoleon Hill documented that successful individuals had developed disciplined methods for separating facts from opinions and making decisions based on the former rather than the latter. They subjected their most cherished beliefs to rigorous examination, constantly asking, "How do I know this is true?" and abandoning positions that couldn't withstand scrutiny. The average person, by contrast, builds entire worldviews around unexamined assumptions, defends those assumptions emotionally rather than logically, and makes life-altering decisions based on what they wish were true rather than what evidence suggests is actually true. What should terrify you is Napoleon Hill's observation that perhaps 90% of the knowledge most people base their decisions upon consists of unverified opinions, outdated information, and convenient beliefs that have never been subjected to serious challenge. The principle of persistence reveals a disturbing truth about human achievement. Napoleon Hill discovered that persistence is the single quality that most reliably predicts ultimate success, more than talent, education, connections, or luck. His research revealed that nearly all significant achievements were preceded by multiple failures, often extending over years or even decades. The defining characteristic of successful individuals wasn't that they avoided failure, but that they refused to accept it as final. Napoleon Hill documented countless cases where enormous success arrived immediately after the most devastating defeats, often when others had completely given up hope. What's truly frightening about this principle is Napoleon Hill's observation that persistence is entirely a mental state, a decision rather than a personality trait. Yet most people abandon their most important goals at the first significant obstacle. His studies revealed that the majority of people quit just 3 feet from gold, never realizing how close they were to breakthrough. The mathematical implication is chilling. Your willingness to persist often determines your results far more than your initial abilities or advantages. The principle of the sixth sense represents perhaps the most controversial, yet according to Napoleon Hill, the most powerful factor in extraordinary achievement. After studying the world's most successful individuals across decades, Napoleon Hill concluded that they all possessed and relied upon highly developed intuition that warned them of dangers and alerted them to opportunities that weren't apparent through logical analysis alone. This intuitive faculty, which Napoleon Hill called the receiving set of the brain, appeared to process billions of data points from the environment and deliver actionable insights in the form of hunches, gut feelings, and sudden inspirations. The development of this faculty wasn't mystical but practical. It emerged naturally through the disciplined application of the other principles Napoleon Hill identified. What should disturb you is his observation that every human being possesses this same intuitive capability, but most people have allowed it to atrophy through neglect or actively suppress it in favor of purely logical thinking. The most successful individuals in history learned to honor their intuition even when it contradicted conventional wisdom or their own logical analysis. The final and perhaps most frightening principle Napoleon Hill uncovered was the existence of what he termed the law of cosmic habit force. This law explains why changing established patterns of thought and behavior requires intense effort initially, but becomes increasingly effortless over time. Every thought and action creates momentum that compounds upon itself, eventually becoming so established that it operates automatically. This principle works with perfect impartiality. It will cement habits of success just as readily as habits of failure. The truly alarming implication is that most people's lives are directed not by conscious choice, but by habits established through years of repetition, often beginning in childhood. Napoleon Hill observed that the average person expends enormous energy fighting against their own established habits, rather than systematically replacing them through the deliberate application of this law. The mathematical power of habit compounds over time, explaining why small daily decisions produce such dramatically different outcomes when projected over decades. What should genuinely frighten you is Napoleon Hill's discovery that most people never summon the initial surge of willpower necessary to break existing patterns, remaining trapped within self-imposed limitations that could be overcome through temporary discomfort followed by the establishment of new, empowering habits. What you've just learned represents knowledge that fewer than 5% of the population will ever possess, yet it has the power to completely transform your existence. The principles Napoleon Hill documented aren't mere suggestions or opinions. They are as reliable and immutable as gravity. They operate whether you believe in them or not, whether you apply them consciously or remain ignorant of their influence. The choice before you now is stark and unavoidable. Will you continue to be governed by these laws unconsciously, allowing them to work primarily against your interests, or will you harness their tremendous power deliberately, directing them toward the achievement of your deepest desires? This knowledge creates an inescapable responsibility. You can no longer claim ignorance of the forces shaping your destiny. From this moment forward, your life will be the product of choice rather than chance. The most successful individuals throughout history discovered that true power comes not from controlling external circumstances, but from controlling the one thing that is always within their domain: their own thoughts. Napoleon Hill summarized this understanding with a statement: "You have absolute control over but one thing, and that is your thoughts." This single insight, when fully grasped, contains the seed of all achievement, all wealth, and all happiness. Every condition in your external world begins as a thought in your internal world. By taking dominion over your mental kingdom, directing your thoughts deliberately toward constructive ends, you set in motion forces that must inevitably manifest in your visible reality. The alternative is to surrender this control by default, allowing your thoughts to be directed by random external influences and habitual patterns established through years of unconscious repetition. This surrender represents the true definition of failure, not the temporary setbacks that all successful people experience, but the permanent abdication of your sovereign right to direct your own mental kingdom. I must issue a final warning. The principles you've learned create a point of no return. Having been exposed to this knowledge, you now face a choice that will determine the entire future course of your life. You can dismiss what you've heard as interesting theory and continue living as before, in which case these very principles will work against you with increasing force. Or you can make the decision, here and now, to align yourself with these laws, allowing them to carry you toward achievements you previously considered impossible. Napoleon Hill observed that this decision point represents the greatest opportunity and the greatest danger in any person's life. The opportunity lies in the unlimited potential that becomes available when you consciously harness these principles. The danger lies in the knowledge that having been shown the path to achievement, any continued mediocrity becomes a conscious choice rather than an unconscious condition. As Napoleon Hill stated, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." The terrifying corollary is that failing to conceive and believe in your potential guarantees you will never achieve it. What separates those who will apply this wisdom from those who won't isn't intelligence, education, or opportunity. It's decision. Napoleon Hill documented that successful individuals make decisions quickly and change them slowly, if at all, while unsuccessful individuals make decisions slowly and change them frequently. The most important decision you can make is to take complete responsibility for your thoughts, recognizing them as the primary creative force in your life. This decision alone will distinguish you from the vast majority who continue blaming circumstances, conditions, or other people for their results. The principles you've learned in the past 20 minutes have created fortunes, built empires, and transformed ordinary individuals into legends. They wait now for your decision. Will you implement them with conviction, persistence, and faith? Or will you return to the comfortable familiarity of old patterns? The choice before you isn't whether these principles will shape your destiny. They absolutely will. The only question is whether they'll do so by your direction or by default. What truly matters now isn't what you've learned, but what you'll do with what you've learned. Knowledge without application remains merely potential, interesting but ultimately powerless. Application transforms potential into kinetic energy, the force that moves mountains, builds empires, and reshapes destinies. Napoleon Hill observed that the world generously rewards those who provide value through action, while remaining indifferent to those who merely possess information. The most successful individuals he studied weren't necessarily those who knew the most, but those who applied what they knew with unwavering persistence. Every principle you've encountered in this video has been tested and proven across generations by individuals from every conceivable background and circumstance. These laws contain no exceptions. They work for anyone who works with them. The only variable in the equation is you. Will you be among the rare few who translate understanding into action? Or will you join the silent majority who know better but don't do better? The answer to that question will determine everything that follows in your life.